Hi, everyone. Welcome. We're going to wait a few minutes to let some people trickle in. Just to introduce myself, my name is Diana Imbert. I am an attorney here at Advocates for Children of New York, and I will be co-leading this session with Betty, who's here, and Bree, who's here as well. They'll introduce themselves in a second. I'm going to go ahead and let's see, give it one more minute, and then I will launch us into a poll to find out a little bit more about you all. And again, just to make sure that you guys are all in the right place, this is applying for 3K and pre-K and other early childhood options. All right, I think we will launch a poll and get you guys started. Okay, so we're asking whether or not the people in the audience are students, parents, educators, or other professionals, and where in New York you all are coming from. Wow, Staten Island. And we are just going to give a few seconds for people to come in. Yep, and as Betty put in the chat, just so that you know, this presentation will be sent out. You will see us throughout the presentation talking about certain things being hyperlinked. So you will be able to get the presentation and quickly be able to click on the links. That'll be helpful as you review what we discussed today. All right, I was waiting for someone from the Bronx to come, but I don't know if we'll get all five. But welcome again, everyone, for people who just joined. My name is Diana Imbert. I am a staff attorney here at Advocates for Children. And we are making sure that everyone's in the right place, but we're doing applying for 3K and pre-K and other early childhood options. We just launched a poll. So if you just got on, we are asking some quick questions about who our audience members are to make sure that we're tailoring this presentation to the best of our abilities to the people in the audience. And yeah, and if you also, just so you know, if you did register for the training link, then that means you will also get these slides. Again, I will be referencing, and Betty is luckily putting this in the chat for me. We'll be referencing certain hyperlinks. And so, yeah, I think in the next 30 seconds, we should get started. So actually, let's get started now. So once again, my name is Diana Imbert. I am a staff attorney here at Advocates for Children. We just closed a poll, and it does sound like we have quite a number of different people here, which is great. We will periodically be stopping to answer questions that may come up. So you can just wait for those periods of times, and we will, or you can put your question in the chat as well, as either Bree or Betty will be answering those questions. All right, let's get started. So as I mentioned, we are doing applying for 3K and pre-K and other early childhood options. We just launched a quick poll and found out all this information about you all. I'm going to do a quick overview. So we did introductions again, but just for anyone who has joined in the last 30 seconds, my name is Diana Imbert. I am a staff attorney here at Advocates for Children of New York, and I will be taking us through the first half of this presentation, and then my colleague Betty will be taking over the second half, and Bree is also here answering questions and also joining along for the ride. So after introductions, which just happened, we will do 3K and pre-K programs. From there, we will talk about applications, talk about special populations, then talk about infant and toddler programs, Head Start, and then finally make sure that we leave you off with some resources. And as you know, it's a lot to cover, so we are going to get started. I will say just quickly, when we talk about special populations, we are talking about students in temporary housing, students in foster care, students with disabilities, and dual language learners as well. Okay, so what is Advocates for Children? Advocates for Children is an independent agency that protects the rights of all New York City students. We have several services. We've been around for over 50 years, and we were started by parents with disabilities. And the mission over the last 50 years has really expanded to include high quality education for all New York City students who face barriers to academic success, with a specific focus on students who come from low income backgrounds. With that being said, we do provide free legal services to qualifying low-income families. We have a helpline that you can call Monday through Thursday from 10 a.m. to 4 p.m. You can always leave us a voicemail. We have guides and resources that you'll find on our website. As I mentioned, you will be getting this presentation, and you can see that our first hyperlink is right here, which is our website. There are workshops and trainings like this one that we offer. And then lastly, we do policy, advocacy, and impact litigation to really expand the work that we're doing beyond individual families, to ensure that we're kind of reaching a broad goal. All right. And so we'll be covering kind of primary early childhood education options in New York City, which is all options between the ages of 0 and 5 that exist. For students who or children who are between the ages of 0 and 5. So the Department of Education, public schools run several programs for children from birth to kindergarten, including infant and toddler programs, 3K and pre-K. And then they also run some, but not all Head Start programs. It's also important to note that some preschool options will include more than one program. But these are the breadth of programs that exist in New York City. And we will be talking about all of them. So we'll start first with 3K and pre-K. Okay. So as I mentioned, the Department of Education runs 3K. It starts in September of the year that your child turns 3. So if your child was born in 2024, then they will be able, 2022, then they are eligible to begin 3K in September of 2025. All children are eligible to apply, but not all children are guaranteed a seat. There are free school day programs that runs for 6 hours and 20 minutes, and some programs offer extended hours and year-round services to qualifying families. There are different settings that you can find 3K programs in. The first is district schools, which are Department of Education's public elementary schools. They're overseen by schools principals. There are pre-K centers that are also run by the Department of Education that offer pre-K and 3K classes only. So they don't have any of the older grade levels, unlike the district schools. Then there are New York City Early Education Centers, NYCECs, which are community-based organizations. And lastly, we have family childcare, which are home-based programs where there are licensed professionals for children from birth to the age of 3. And I'm actually going to stop to see if there are any questions because we have already covered so much. I don't see anything. So I will move on. Just a reminder, you will see throughout this presentation various kind of slides that look like this. Again, Bree and Betty will be answering questions in the chat, but if there is a specific question that may come up, you can put it in the Q&A, or actually ideally in the Q&A, so that we can make sure that we answer it. Any good questions that might make sense for the whole group will definitely be answered in these periods of time throughout the presentation. Okay, we'll move on. Okay, so that was 3K, and pre-K is also run by the Department of Education. As I've stated, it starts in September of the year your child turns 4. So in this case, it would be for families born 2022, 2021. And all children who apply are guaranteed a seat. So unlike 3K, where if it's not a guarantee, in this case, all eligible families do have a seat for September of 2025. This program runs from similarly is 6 hours and 20 minutes. And again, for qualifying families, there are some programs that offer extended hours and year-round services. Similarly, there are different settings that you can find pre-K programs in. In this case, the district schools that we discussed earlier, There are also the pre-K centers that are also, again, both of these run by the Department of Education. Pre-K programs also exist in the New York City Early Education Centers that we discussed earlier. And in addition to these three different locations that you can find 3K programs in, you can find pre-K programs in charter schools. It is important to note that charter schools are not run by the Department of Education. You can find these schools and these programs in the same way that you would find the Department of Education programs that we'll talk about in just a second. However, you can't apply to these programs using the pre-K application. You have to actually go to the individual schools in order to do that. And unlike 3K, there is actually no kind of family childcare seats. Instead, these are the 4 different locations that you can find pre-K programs. Okay. All right, so we have talked about the different programs, locations, and so now it's important to talk about the different type of seats and sort of places and how the programs work and run. So the seat types is that Department of Education 3K and pre-Ks can exist in school day, which are 10-month school year programs. They're 6 hours and 20 minutes long. They're free, and all families are eligible. Again, in 3K, it is not guaranteed, but in pre-K, it is. And then there are extended day / year programs, which exist for up to 10 hours. They're year round, and they're for qualifying families. And some families do pay a small fee, and there is an immigration requirement here that is important to just note. These programs do offer longer hours, as does the Head Start that we'll talk about in just a second. But these programs will, because they are specifically for qualifying families, will ask you for proof of eligibility, and that might be, we'll actually talk about the eligibility factors and sort of what you need, but they will be asking for documents. So it is important to note that when you go to register for the program, they will ask you for certain things. The same is true for Head Start, which again is at least 8 hours long. It is year-round as well, and it is, again, for qualifying families that do have to meet the eligibility requirements. Okay, and again, we'll talk about this in just a second. So the 3K and pre-K application process. The sort of list, as we say, is that you first kind of explore your options by doing research on the programs. We'll talk about each of these a little bit more individually, but you'll do research and explore the options that exist. You'll then apply and rank the programs. You will then, after your putting your application, you will receive an offer and register in the late spring. And then lastly, you'll have waitlist and you'll hear from programs throughout the summer. We'll talk about each of these more specifically individually, but this is sort of the overall process of applying to 3K and pre-K. Important to note as well that families can apply to as many programs as they wish. And I think I mentioned this before, but the charter schools for the pre-K application process are not going to be found on the DOE application process. Okay, so before you apply, there are really 3 important tools that you should be aware of, and these are all kind of the tools that you use to explore different programs and what program might be best suited for your child. The 3 options that we recommend and that exist, and again, these are all hyperlinked, so you should be able to quickly just click on them and it'll take you straight there. So the first is My Schools, and it allows you, and we will click on this and do a little bit more investigation on My Schools specifically in just a second. But My Schools allows you to search for programs close to an address, close to your home, work, or other location. It has a map, which obviously allows you to search for that. You can find contact information for each program. So if you need to call the school specifically, you can do that. And what's also really awesome is that they allow you to star schools. So as you're applying, you realize, as you're exploring programs and you really like a school, you can star it to make it easier to find and apply later on. There is also the Find a School options, which again will allow you to search through schools. And then also the New York City Public School Admissions Guide. The admission guide is only now found online. And so This again will take you straight there. This admissions guide includes more than just pre-K and 3K. It includes infant and toddler and also older grades, but a really great resource put out by the Department of Education. Okay. So as I mentioned, my schools will allow you to really search your address. In this case, we put in Advocates for Children's our office address. And as you can see, it is pulling up all of the schools that are sort of within distance here. A really great feature is that it also tells you not only how far the school is, what district we're in, whether it's accessible or not. It also tells you train lines that'll tell you how to get there. So a lot of really incredible information can be found in my schools. And the other thing is that it also allows you to again, program information, program and seat type, contact information, admissions priorities, quality snapshot, and other features. And also you can search, you can filter out specific things, like if you're looking for a program in a specific district or a setting type or a seat type or accessibility, all of these are things that you can filter for. So it's a very, very easy to use and allows you to really kind of sift through a lot of information and kind of get the information that you want. And then, of course, has that additional great added feature of allowing you to star programs as you are researching them. Okay, so again, just a really important reminder, it will also tell you whether or not these certain pre-K programs have extended day and year availables, and will also tell you that there are eligibility requirements. So it's good that it'll let you know that if you do add these programs to your application, you will be asked a series of screening questions to see if you qualify. If you receive an offer to one of these programs, as I mentioned before, you will need to provide documentation to the program before you're able to enroll your child at that program. So something that we recommend is just contacting these schools before applying, just to make sure you meet the eligibility requirements. Okay, we've covered a lot, and so I think it's a good time to do a poll. All right, so the DOE provides busing to preschoolers attending 3K and pre-K in the following setting. A, district schools, B, pre-K centers, C, New York City early education centers, D, all of the above, or E, none of the above. I'm gonna give you guys a couple of seconds to answer. I'm gonna give you guys like 10 more seconds to see if anyone else wants to take a stab at the question. Okay. So some of us got it correct. The answer is E, none of the above. The DOE actually does not provide busing to preschool students except under special circumstances for students with disabilities, attending special education programs, or in very limited circumstances, that is the case. And then for students in temporary housing and children in foster care. So one of the things that you may want to consider is in my schools using that feature of like how far, what train lines. So really kind of considering the distance of a preschool and how you will get your child to 3K and pre-K as a really important decision-making factor in applying to the schools. All right. So 2025 to 2026 school year applications. They're due by February 28th. So again, you're doing a great job by being a part of this webinar and just kind of getting prepared for the process. So again, if you were born in 2021, then you are eligible. If your child or the child is born in 2021, then they're eligible to apply to pre-K this year. If they were born in 2022, they're eligible to apply to 3K. And there are 3 ways to apply. You can apply online through myschools.nyc. And as we discussed, it's also great because you've already been starring, and an easy way to kind of access the schools you've been exploring. Online, you can also do this in any of the 10 most common languages. You can also do it by the phone. Interpretation services are available in more than 200 languages if you are doing it over the phone. You can ask questions and request information about admissions in any language when you call. And then lastly, you can also go to family welcome centers, and family welcome centers, we do recommend that you make an appointment, but family welcome centers can also help you put in the application as well. Applications are not first come, first served. All applications that are received by the February 28th deadline are treated exactly the same. So admissions will be based on admissions priorities, which we'll discuss next. Okay. Again, we've covered a lot of information, and I just really want to make sure that there aren't any questions. And so I don't think I see any, but
Hi, sorry. There was one question about when applications opened. The applications opened in January. So they are open now. You can start applying to 3K and pre-K programs on My Schools by calling the enrollment office or at Family Welcome Centers. You have until February 28th. I believe as Diana said, these are not first come, first serve. It's not rolling admissions. So any application received by the 28th will be treated the same.
Thank you, Betty. Okay. So speaking about admissions priorities, because it's actually really important to consider, and there is sort of different admissions priorities for different settings, and so we'll talk about for pre-K and 3K in different settings. So we'll talk about them. So families who list a particular program anywhere on their application, there are sort of priority settings into how this works. And so the first priority group are students who are current students who are in the program. The next priority group are for zoned zoned students and who have a sibling who goes to the school that they are attending. After that, the next priority group, and again, these are the groupings in which you would get admitted into the program. So current students are the ones that are going to get admitted, and again, this would be for pre-K here. Current students would be the ones that would get accepted. So all programs in zone district schools will accept students in this order. So if the student is zoned for that school and also has a sibling in that school, they have the next priority group, and will get accepted in that order. The third priority group is other zoned students. So again, in this case, the student is still zoned for that school, but they do not have a sibling that attends that school. And again, because we're talking about district schools, there are older grades in this district school. So it might be a student in a different grade. After the students who are zoned, comes students who are in the district that the school is in and have a sibling that attend that school. After that admissions priority, the next group of students that they will pull from are students who are outside of that district, but have a sibling that go to that school. Next are other students that go to that district. And then lastly are all the students outside the district. So if you are applying to district schools, then you have to consider that if you are, for example, a student that's applying that is not even in that district, and you obviously don't have a sibling that goes to that school, you're sort of in this last category, you have the least chance of getting accepted into the school that you're applying to versus a student who is a current student. So very important to think about these admissions priorities and just remember that they sort of go in this line, with current students being the most likely to be admitted because they are given priority and preference to the other students in the groups. And then the least likely to be admitted, just given admissions priority, are students that are outside the school district. Okay. And so for pre-K and 3K, students receive offers to pre-K centers based on this following order. So for pre-K, students, the first group of students who have the admissions priority are current students who currently attend 3K for all at the pre-K center. The second group of students that has the second kind of admissions priority are students that are inside of the district. And the last group of students, again, are students outside of the district. So again, when applying to pre-K in this case, if you are a current student at the 3K center that the pre-K has, then you have the highest chance of getting accepted. And then again, the students who are sort of last in the priority list are the students who are outside of districts. And then for pre-K center, the ways that they accept 3K students is that they go from children who live in the district and who also have a sibling at the pre-K center. So again, if it's a 3K student, a pre-K student, and there's a sibling, they have the highest order of priority, down to the students who are other children that are in the district but do not have a sibling at the pre-K center. Sorry, other children who live, sorry, excuse me. The siblings actually first matter whether or not the children live in the district and have a sibling at the pre-K center. And children, the next priority group are children who live outside the district and who will have a sibling at the pre-K center. Then the next group of students, so the third kind of group is other children that are in that district, and the last group are children who live outside the district. So again, siblings both in district and outside of the district are the first two admissions priority categories. And please put questions in the chat. I know this can get very confusing, but it is important to understand admissions priorities because you want to give your child the best chance of getting admitted into the schools that they want. Okay. And then admissions priorities for New York City early education centers. Again, we are sending this presentation around because, as you can see, different centers and different programs have different admissions for 3K and pre-K. And so it's important for us to go through these, but also want you to have this as a reference as you're going through the application process. So for programs in NYSEEKs, which are these community-based organizations, they accept students in the following order of priorities. So for 3K, it's children who are currently enrolled at the NYSEEKs. Then it goes to children who have siblings who are enrolled at this NYSEEK. Then from there, it goes to children whose families currently get free or subsidized social services from the organization that is running the Center's 3K program. Then we go to other children who live in the district. And then lastly, all other students. For pre-K, it's for children who currently attend the 3K. So there's that first group. It's children who currently attend the center's 3K or other programs for 3-year-olds. Then it goes to children who have siblings at the center. The next admissions priority group is children whose families currently get free or subsidized social services from the organization running the center's pre-K program. And then children who speak a language other than English that the center specializes in serving. And then lastly, all other children. So again, important to note, these are just listed. And so we've gone through all of the different admissions priorities for the different locations that you can find pre-K and 3K programs at. And again, just important for you to be able to review this. And again, if there are questions in the chat, please put them in put them into the Q&A so that we can make sure that you understand this. Okay, I think time for some trivia. So, true or false, children who attend a pre-K program in a district school are guaranteed a seat in that school for kindergarten. Okay, gotta give you a few more seconds. Okay, so really quickly, just want to note also, because I thank you, Betty, for putting this in the chat. I just want to make clear, because I was talking a lot about siblings, and you can see that having a sibling does impact and puts you in a higher admissions priority category. So important to note that a sibling is not just a biological sibling, but it includes a full biological sibling, but includes a half sibling, a step sibling, a foster sibling of the applicant who lives in the same household. So it's a pretty broad definition of sibling. And to answer the trivia question, half of us got it correct. It's false. Your child's attendance at a pre-K program at a Department of Education district school does not guarantee that he or she can attend the same school for kindergarten for the following school year. You will still need to apply to kindergarten through the kindergarten admissions process when your child is in pre-K. And so decisions about which children will receive offers to which schools for kindergarten will be made on a similar kind of admissions priority, as you can see that we've been discussing, that exists for kindergarten. So it does not impact the seat for kindergarten. And I am actually going to shift over and let Betty continue to present.
Thanks, Diana. And just before we move on from those admissions priority groups, I just want to emphasize that we share that information so you have a sense of how likely it is that your child will receive an offer in one of those programs that you're interested in. It's not to discourage you from applying. So if you're interested in a program, even if you are outside of that district, your child doesn't have siblings in that program or something similar, you can still list it on your application. You can list as many programs as you'd like on your application. Just understand that it's unlikely that your child may receive an offer. So you would also want to consider adding other programs to your application where it's perhaps more likely they get a seat. And Diane, if you can just back up one slide. Thank you. So Diana went through basically all the admissions priorities and everything you do up through February 28th when you're submitting your application. I'm going to finish off the process and then talk about some of the special populations. All families who apply by the 28th will receive a letter in May. For pre-K families, you should all receive an offer letter in May. For families who apply to 3K, not all of you are guaranteed a seat, unfortunately, although last year, every family by September was offered a seat, so there's hope. Families who apply to 3K will receive a results letter. Those who receive an offer, that letter will include information about how to accept your offer and register your child at that program. We recommend that all families follow those instructions, accept the offer right away. By doing that, you're basically saying that you're reserving the seat for your child in September. You're indicating that you want your child to attend, you're accepting the program, you're providing whatever documentation is needed to enroll your child, and securing that seat. You're automatically going to be on the wait list for any program that you ranked higher than the program that made you an offer. Accepting the offer and pre-registering your child does not remove you from the wait list. So if your child was offered a seat to the pre-K program that you had, fourth on your list, you're automatically on the wait list for the programs you ranked 1, 2, and 3. You can accept your offer to the program you ranked fourth. Throughout the summer, as as families may move, as families may be choosing other programs for their children, it may be that a seat can become available. And if that happens, those programs will reach out to you to offer you a seat from their wait list. So these are just important days to keep in mind, or important things to keep in mind. And again, another reminder for those extended year day programs and Head Start programs that have those additional requirements, you may have to provide some additional documentation in addition to the registration information that we're going to cover next. So when you go to accept your child's offer and register them, there are some documents that you should bring with you. Among other things, you're going to have to show proof of your child's age. The most common ways we see families do this is with a birth certificate. You can also use a passport or a record of baptism. Then you will also need 2 proofs of your address. It can be a lease, a deed, a mortgage statement, a utility bill, rent receipt, some government ID. Things that you can't use are things, for example, like a magazine subscription, a cell phone bill. Those aren't considered kind of official documents with your proof of address, but most families are able to provide some of these other options that the DOE does accept. For the most part, you do not need to provide proof of citizenship or a social security number. Schools should not be asking you about immigration status of you or a child. There is an exception for our families who are looking for those extended day year seats. In order to qualify for funding for some of those programs, there is an immigration requirement that I'll cover later, but that is a small percentage of those seats for any seats in a district school, in a pre-K center, and in many of the New York City early education centers, you do not need to provide proof of citizenship or social security number at all throughout this process. For students in temporary housing, you have a right to immediate enrollment, even if the family can't provide these documents at the time that they go to register the child. So the school has to, you're able to accept the offer, register your child, and reserve that seat. And your child will actually be able to start in the program while you have a grace period to get these records. And we're going to go over students in temporary housing in more detail later on as well. For families who are watching this and have a child maybe born in, 2021, and you're watching this because you want to apply to pre-K next year, your child's actually currently eligible to be in 3K. And so for families who have children who are eligible now, there is a feature that was added on My Schools at NYC to help you find a program after the application process has ended and in the middle of the school year. And this is also helpful, for example, if you moved in the middle of the school year, lost the seat that your child was previously attending. In order to use this feature, you just go on My Schools at NYC. There's a special filter where we're pointing to it using this arrow. So families of children born in 2021 who are currently eligible for 3K, and families of children born in 2020 who are currently eligible for pre-K can use the need a seat for 2024-2025 school year to find a program that may be available now. You don't apply to those programs by My School. You'll find a list of those programs when you use the filter, and then you contact the programs directly to confirm that the seat is available and to ask them how you can go ahead and enroll your child. We'll pause to see if there are any questions. Looks like we're good. So charter schools, we've gone over that charter schools do offer pre-K programs. Those are programs for 4-year-olds, but you do not apply to charter schools through the DOE's application process. You can find the list of charter schools on My Schools. They're included in the directory, but you apply to these programs separately. Charter schools are different from DOE public schools. Although they're free public schools, they're not run by the Department of Education. They're run by a board of trustees. And so it is a separate agency that the schools are a little bit independent in that way. So to find pre-K programs, again, you can go on myschools.nyc. You can also go on schools.nyc charterschools.org. It's a website dedicated to New York City charter schools specifically. You should contact schools directly to apply and to ask them for their specific deadlines. Most applications are due by April 1st, but each individual school might vary a little bit. So really reach out to them a little bit earlier, definitely before April 1st, to ask about that process. And usually admissions is by lottery, although many schools also offer priority for siblings who are already attending their programs. Okay, so true or false, let's see if you're still with us. Families have until February 28th to apply to pre-K programs in charter schools. Hopefully this is an easy one. Okay, so we have a few results in, and most of you got this right. The correct answer is false. The pre-K application closes on February 28th, but charter schools are not part of the pre-K application. In order to apply to charter school programs, you have to contact charter schools directly, and for many charter schools, that application is not due until April 1st. So you can focus now before February 28th on applying to the New York City public schools or DOE schools, the programs in the district schools and pre-K centers, in the New York City early education centers. Get all of those, rank those programs, get all of that in by February 28th. And then you can also have time to think about whether you're interested in applying to charter schools separately, or 3K and pre-K programs in charter schools separately. Okay. So now we're going to start focusing on some special populations, and we're going to start with students in temporary housing. The definition for students in temporary housing is broader than I think most people think about. It includes children living in a shelter, in a motel, in a car, a bus or train, or in a public space. Or it also can include children who, as a family, they're living with friends or relatives, either because they lost their housing or economic hardship. So it is not just children in shelters. I think the last definition of this, like the doubled up, it's considered, is something that a lot of people aren't aware of or don't understand. Students in temporary housing have a lot of rights. It's a population that, we're really trying to encourage to have higher attendance and school stability. And so a lot of these additional rights are really intended to encourage that. So with the application and registering, for example, you have families should apply to 3K and pre-K, including all families in temporary housing. Use your temporary address when you're applying, and that can be used to help determine which are your zone schools, which district you're in, and will get you admissions priorities based on your current location. If you get an offer, you should register. You can go to the program and register and accept that offer, even if you're missing some of the documents that I reviewed that are typically required for you to register. If there's an open seat in a program, at any time throughout the school year, a child in temporary housing can attend, even if the family's missing documents. So again, we know that unfortunately students in temporary housing are less likely to have access to all of these documents that they need, especially given the circumstances that may have led to the loss of housing. So families may not have that birth certificate right away, may not have different types of records. So children in temporary housing are allowed to register, enroll, and start attending the program, and there is a grace period to allow families time to get those records. There is a right to school stability. So a child can stay in a program even if their address changes. So even if a child is living in Brooklyn right now and going to a pre-K program that's 2 blocks away, but then the family is relocated to a new shelter, for example, in Manhattan, that family has the choice. They can have their child remain in the current pre-K center and get transportation there, or the family can request a new program closer to their new home. In order to get children to school, families in temporary housing have a right to transportation. For many families, this is a monthly Metro card that's provided to parents so that the parent can take the child to their 3K and pre-K program and pick them up. In limited circumstances, families are also eligible for busing. This is a little bit harder to get, but for example, for children who are living in temporary housing in a shelter, for example, if they're attending a 3K or pre-K program in a district school, it's likely if they have an older sibling, it's likely that there may already be a bus route, right? Because there is busing for older grades. And so there could be the possibility of having that 3 or 4-year-old also put on that bus to ride to school and get there with their siblings. So it is in very rare circumstances. In order to get help or better understand your rights and whether you're eligible, we recommend that you call the DOE or contact the DOE regional managers. This is a hyperlink. And again, we'll be giving you copies of the slides so that you can find their contact information. Also call us at our helpline. We are able to go through all of this with you and help you understand, confirm whether you qualify as a student in temporary housing or your family qualifies as in temporary housing, go over your rights, go over any support with enrollment, transportation, and anything else. Students in foster care have a lot of similar rights to students in temporary housing, including the right to immediate enrollment, school stability, and transportation. Students in foster care also are, for the most part, associated with a foster care agency, which is a really great resource. If you are working with a child in foster care, we recommend that you reach out to the foster care agency. In many circumstances, they're able to provide case planners or education specialists that assist with the application and enrollment process. I know of many agencies that will sit down with the family, help create that My Schools account, will put in the address, look at programs in the area, help you rank them and everything else. And as I said, like students in temporary housing, students in foster care have a right to immediate enrollment. So if there's a program with an open seat, a child in foster care should be allowed to attend that program, enroll at any point during the school year, even if the family can't provide the documentation that's usually required. Also have a right to school stability, so a child in foster care can stay in their current program, even if they're placed in foster care or in a different area or change foster homes, right? You want to maintain some level of stability, and this really encourages that. And students in foster care have the right to transportation, For many families, that is a Metro card for an adult to take the child to and from 3K and pre-K. There is a possibility of busing. Again, this is usually if there's already a bus route or can be a bus route, and it's typically for children, preschool children who have older siblings who attend the same school or the school at least in their area. So it's usually for kiddos who attend 3K or pre-K in a DOE district school. Students with disabilities. We want families of children with disabilities to know that you can and should apply to 3K and pre-K programs as well. These programs serve all students. And children with disabilities can receive their services or many services in any and all 3K and pre-K programs. So including, for example, related services like speech therapy, occupational therapy, and physical therapy that can be provided in any setting. As well as SEEIT services, which is a special education teacher who can work one-on-one with the child all day or part of the day, depending on what their IEP recommends. There are additional rights for students with disabilities, including the right to add a seat to a program that's already full if there are not other programs in the area, to allow that child with a disability to be able to attend the program. And children with disabilities, all students have the right to an accessible program that meets their mobility needs and other physical needs, so that they can safely attend school, right? So if that may be a school or a program that has an elevator, it's all on one floor, or it meets other sensory, visual, audio needs for the child. In order to get help, if you have any questions about students with disabilities attending 3K and pre-K programs, you should contact your CPSC office. This is the office that oversees the child's preschool evaluations, the referrals, the IEP, helps you develop the IEP, which is a service plan. And it's also the office that's responsible for sending the related service providers if necessary to your programs. So for example, a lot of programs in New York City early childhood education centers, they don't have a speech therapist on staff at their site, but the Department of Education is responsible for sending a speech therapist to that program to work with any of the children who require speech therapy. And contact your CPSC office, your administrator and chairperson if your child is waiting for those services. You can also call the DOE Special Education Office at that 718-935-2007 number with any questions or complaints, or if your child is attending a 3K or pre-K program and not receiving either their speech therapy, occupational therapy, or SEEIT services. Students with more significant disabilities may require more supportive setting than what we consider general education, 3K and pre-K. 3K and pre-K in the settings we've gone over, are typically, for example, for pre-K up to 18 students. It's a general education teacher. And although children in those programs can receive additional supports, like we said, like those therapies and a special education teacher, children with more significant disabilities may require a more specialized setting, including a special class in an integrated setting or a preschool special class. An integrated setting is a smaller class size for students with and without IEPs that's overseen by a special education teacher. So it provides a little bit more support and also expertise in working with children with disabilities. Children who need even more support may have a IEP that recommends a small class. This could be a class of 6, 8, or 12 students. All are students with disabilities, and it's a class with a special education teacher. In both of these settings, children can also receive all of their therapies, and as I said, including speech therapy, physical therapy, and occupational therapy. If a child's IEP, their special education plan, recommends a integrated class or a special class, families do not apply to these types of programs through the DOE pre-K and 3K applications. What happens is that if your IEP recommends this type of program, then the CPSC administrator, again, this special education office, is responsible for finding the program for the child. And because the DOE is responsible for finding these programs, and there are less of them, children also have a right to busing to these programs. So this is one of the few cases where the DOE is required to provide, door-to-door transportation in order to get children in either to their integrated class or their special class. If you run into any complications, if your child's IEP recommends one of these programs, you can contact your CPSC office or early childhood busing for assistance. And the busing is specifically for assistance with transportation. Okay. So again, let's see if you're still with us. I'll do another bit of trivia as we wrap up. This is a true or false. Families of children with disabilities should not apply to 3K or pre-K until after they've had an IEP meeting. Okay, looks like everyone is locked in. This is a little bit of a tricky one. I can see why this is stumping some folks. The correct answer is false. Families of students with disabilities should apply to 3K and pre-K during the application process, just like everyone else. So for September of 2025, apply now. Apply by February 28th, even if you have not had your child's initial preschool IEP meeting. And the reason for that is, all of the programs that you're applying to in 3K and pre-K offer the same supports and services for students with disabilities. So all of those programs can offer related services, occupational therapy, physical therapy, speech therapy. They can all offer SEIT, the special education teacher that works one-on-one with a child. They can offer paraprofessionals as supports, can offer nursing services, right? They're all considered equal when it comes to serving students with disabilities. If your child needs a more supportive program, if your child's IEP then shows that your child needs that integrated class or that special class, even if you've received an offer to 3K or pre-K, you can then turn down that offer and choose the integrated class or the special class that's offered to you by the DOE. So we do encourage all families to apply during the application period, so by February 28th for the upcoming year. So another special population is emergent multilingual learners. These are students who are learning multiple languages at the same time. And so in many situations, it's students who speak a language other than English in the home. For pre-K specifically, so the program for 4-year-olds, the DOE offers dual language programs where children are learning both English and another language at the same time. So they're receiving instruction in English and another language with the goal of helping students learn both languages and doing so pretty evenly. For pre-K and 3K, there are also enhanced language supports. These are programs where children are receiving potentially some instruction, but also it can be some guidance or other supports within the school in English and another target language. And so this really varies. And you'll see in my schools if a school offers or if a program offers enhanced language support, but to really understand what that means, we recommend that you contact the program directly. It could be that there are some staff at the program that speak a target language, that there are posters and books available in that other language. And it doesn't necessarily mean that there's instruction or that children are learning in that other language that's supported. To understand more and for help, we recommend that you contact the DOE at pre-K dual language at schools.nyc.gov. Again, dual language currently is for pre-K only, so for 4-year-olds. There are some pilots for 3-year-olds, but my understanding is you can't yet filter and search and apply to those programs. Okay. Checking for questions. All right, so we generally have covered 3K and pre-K. Now we're going to focus on some other options, including for the youngest children. The DOE runs some infant and toddler programs. And so these are programs that serve children from about 6 weeks up to 3 years old. Then once a child is 3, you're in 3K. When you're 4, you're in pre-K. When you're 5, you're in kindergarten. These programs are free and low-cost programs that offer extended hours, so up to 10 hours a day, and it's year long. But these are programs that are only for qualifying families, specifically families who qualify for childcare. In order to qualify for childcare, these are the kind of the requirements. And this is not just the requirement for infant and toddler, but also for the extended day and year programs. And just as a reminder, most of these programs are located in New York City early education centers, or also for 3K in family childcare networks. The childcare eligibility requirements do not apply to families who are in programs in district schools, because those are standard school days, and pre-K centers, which are also standard school days, or even to New York City early childhood education centers that are just the standard 6 hours and 20 minutes. This is for extended day, year programs, which includes all of the infant and toddler programs. Family has to qualify based on financial need or other factors. And so how you demonstrate that can include a family who is on public assistance, who has low income, and they need childcare because they're working, right? And they're working the required number of hours. They're going to school, so they're receiving an education and need childcare in order for the parent to go to school while knowing that their child is in a safe environment. Families who have active cases with ACS qualify. Families living in temporary housing, many families who live in shelter qualify specifically right away. Families receiving domestic violence services. All of these are examples of families who are eligible for childcare. We can go back. Even families who qualify, some families may be required to pay a small fee for their child to attend the program. It is based on a sliding scale. Eligibility does not mean you get free childcare. It does mean for some families in those extended day programs or infant and toddler programs, you may have to pay a fee. Or if your child's in 3K and pre-K in an extended year, it's just a fee for those additional hours. Some resources to see if you're eligible, we recommend you call 311, that you contact a family welcome center. Those are the DOE offices that can also help you with the application for 3K and pre-K, and to call a child care resource and referral agency. They can help you understand your eligibility and also find programs in your area, including programs outside of this application process for 3K and pre-K. To apply for infant and toddler programs, for finding programs, recommend you call 311. You can also visit myschools.nyc. It's not as clear to get to the infant and toddler programs. You would go in myschools.nyc, you would first go to the 3K directory, and then within the 3K directory, you would choose the filter for infant and toddler program. So it is a separate set of programs, but you have to go through the 3K kind of site in order to view them. You can apply to infant and toddler programs at any time. It's not based on the school year, so there isn't a central application time or application process the way there is for 3K and pre-K. So if your child is, if you have a child now who is, 15 months old, and you want them in an infant and toddler program, and you believe you qualify, you're a working parent, low income, you may want to consider applying now. To do so, you contact the programs directly. You can also use a city website, that's mycity.nyc.gov. They are focused specifically on childcare, and so including doing a screening to see if you may be eligible. You can complete the application for subsidized childcare through this website, and then work on finding programs. For help, this can be a complicated process. You may have to submit a lot of documentation, right, to show both your income and the reason you need care, or to show your housing status and another reason that you may be eligible. So for help with this process, you can contact family welcome centers, especially if it's to enroll your child in one of the DOE infant and toddler programs or 3K programs. You can contact the child care resource and referral agencies. Again, this is a hyperlink. These agencies are not run by the Department of Education, but they do understand the childcare application and who's eligible to apply. They can walk you through that process and help you find programs. You can also email the Department of Education at CC, which stands for childcare, application@schools.nyc.gov. There is another program, a program called Promise NYC, that's available for families who do not qualify for the childcare that I just went over. And it's specifically for families, and that program is specifically for families who are eligible through state and federal funding. Those are the people who make childcare, who fund those childcare programs. They have some requirements that not all families can meet, and Promise NYC is a city program to help the families who don't meet those requirements. For example, it may be that a family doesn't meet those requirements because that application asks that a child have valid immigration status, including, being a U.S. citizen, here on a visa, being a lawful permanent resident. And so, for example, if a child is undocumented, they would not be eligible for the traditional care, subsidized care. And so Promise NYC is there to step in. To be eligible for Promise NYC, a child has to be under 13 and live in New York City. 13 is the age because, sorry, it looks like the slide just went blurry, and I don't know if that's just on my end. So a child needs to be under the age of 13. Promise NYC not only covers childcare, but also some after-school programs. The family cannot qualify for other forms of childcare, so can't qualify for the childcare subsidy that I just reviewed, and the family income needs to be below 300% of the poverty level. And we've given that chart here that shows what that income range is. Sorry, is anyone else having a hard time? Okay. Apologies for the technical difficulties. Thank you. And we're back. Okay, so I'm going to quickly go over how you apply to Promise NYC, and then we'll kick it back actually to Diana and Bree to close out. If families are interested in applying at Promise NYC, unfortunately, there are very limited seats available. Funding is limited, and a lot of families have already secured it for this year. For those of you who are interested, you can contact one of these community-based organizations across the boroughs, depending on where you live. So families in Brooklyn would contact the Center for Family Life in Sunset Park. Families in Manhattan and the Bronx can contact Northern Manhattan Improvement Corporation. In Queens, the Chinese American Planning Council. And in Staten Island, there's La Colmena. These are their phone numbers. Some of them are available on WhatsApp. Again, I think the program may be at capacity now, but this is their contact information to assist you going forward. Okay. Dan, I think we'll go over Head Start, but if anyone has any questions about anything we've reviewed so far, I'll save for an extra minute to answer anything in the Q&A. Thank you.
Thanks, Betty. All right, sounds like we're ready to go. Sorry for the technical difficulties. Glad we were able to get that resolved. So Head Start. Head Start is a year-round program that supports the academic, mental, social, and emotional development of children from age 3 until they enter kindergarten. In addition to educational services, programs provide children and their families with health, nutrition, social, and other services. Programs are at least 8 hours long. Many Head Start programs are also Department of Education 3K and pre-K programs, and parents with children that are born in 2021 should apply for September 2025 placement through the Department of Education's pre-K for all application process. And families of children born in 2022 should apply to the Department of Education's 3K application. While many Head Start programs are run by the Department of Education, there are also separate Head Start programs that are not part of the Department of Education. You can find these programs using the Find a Program link. And again, hyperlinked as just to remember. Okay. I think that there were no questions, so I'm going to move on, but just a reminder to put the questions in the Q&A. We are almost getting done. Okay. Lastly, really important to note, there is language access rights, so translation and interpretation. The Department of Education is actually required to provide these services. You will find that the Department of Education has guides and things available in Arabic, Bengali, Chinese, French, Haitian, Creole, Korean, Russian, Spanish, and Urdu, which are the most common languages. And this includes translation and interpretation. You can request translation and interpretation at the child's school or by completing the translation and interpretation request form, by contacting the Office of Language Access or calling 311. Important to note there's also phone interpretation, which will expand the languages that are available, and that parents have a right to translation and interpretation no matter what language they speak. So again, even if it's not one of the 9 covered languages, parents have the right to request the service and have access to interpretation in other languages over the phone and sometimes in person. Again, so some AFC guides and fact sheets. They are all hyperlinked here. So we have a guide to early intervention, to preschool special education services, to kindergarten transition for students with disabilities, and to there's a kindergarten fact sheet that's important for us to have. And then for program and admissions, there's applying to 3K and pre-K and applying to the kindergarten guide. All of these will be able to be accessed through our hyperlinks when you get the presentation. And then there are Department of Education resources. So again, just enrollment, you can always go to a family welcome center. And you can also go to the Office of Student Enrollment, calling them by this number or emailing them here. And again, just some DOE resources, websites for you to learn more about the various programs that exist. And that's all. So thank you so much for coming in. We are going to give you a quick evaluation before you go. We would love if you could respond and answer these quick 7 questions because they are really helpful for the ways in which we gather information and just want to make sure that we're tailoring our webinars to the questions and things that exist out there. And I know there are a lot of questions. So obviously if there are any, excuse me, a lot of information. So if there is any remaining questions, we will be here for just a few more minutes. But obviously always have the opportunity to call us at our helpline if there are any specific questions that either we covered in this webinar or ones that come up. And again, use our guides. We will also have more workshops as different things present themselves. So we hope to see you at further workshops. And yeah, please expect this presentation at the end of our, at the end of the webinar. And thank you again. I'm Diana Imbert with Advocates for Children. Gonna give it a few more seconds. I don't see any questions, but we will give it just another minute to see if anyone else can answer the poll before we close the webinar. Thank you so much. And if there is nothing else, you guys are free to leave. Thank you so much. We appreciate your time. We will end the poll and again, we'll send everyone off with the rest of this information once in your email close to the end of the webinar. Thank you.